speak through Fox News and let the independents who are tuning into you, let them know what it is that she stands for, the principles behind her positions.
It used to be that new candidates were advised to brush up on the issues so they could handle questions from anyone, even tough questions. The idea behind that was that it prepared you also for actually governing. But now the advice to candidates is only to talk to sympathetic reporters.
We need to start now by electing strong leaders who aren't afraid to shake it up. We need strong, principled leaders, public servants who respect our Constitution.
We need clarity. We deserve answers, so we don't ask the same questions tomorrow.
Good night,
Lon. Okay, I can explain that. Mom, if you are watching right now, first of all, hi. And second, there's a reason that this phrase is in quotation marks. It is in quotation marks because while I have not personally read every single Sarah Palin email released today in the state of Alaska, I'm willing to bet almost a whole dollar that this is the most interesting phrase in any one of those emails. A publicist emailed Governor Palin inviting her to see a band play at a house party. This was the pitch. Quote, "The Strange Boys are playing at 7:30 sharp. So tip the kids and bring beef, tequila, and condoms." That was in September 2008, after Sarah Palin had become John McCain's running mate. Governor Palin did not reply to the email, but she did forward it on to a staffer, which means absolutely nothing in the greater scheme of national politics or state politics. But it does give us a handy new phrase to unsettle the mothers of everyone who works on this show, and which does really pointedly raise the question, why do we know this stuff? At 9 a.m. local time in Juneau, Alaska today, the state released boxed sets of nearly 25,000 pages of emails then Governor Sarah Palin exchanged with her husband and with about 50 government officials. The 6 boxed sets weighed 250 pounds. They had to be taken out on state-owned hand trucks, which then had to be returned. Journalists raced the documents off to the nearest scanners because these documents were delivered on actual paper. They were not delivered electronically. So in order to make them searchable, they would have to be scanned into electronic form. This all started back in 2008, 10 days after Republican presidential nominee John McCain picked Governor Palin as his running mate. David Korn, the Washington bureau chief for Mother Jones magazine, filed a request with the state of Alaska to see all of the emails that had been sent by or to Governor Palin in what had then been her 21 months as governor. Within days, David was joined by a heaping handful of other media outlets who filed their own email requests. That was the fall of 2008. More than 1,000 days later, the time that has elapsed since this records request was filed is longer than the entire time Sarah Palin served as governor. More than 1,000 days later, the state has coughed up the records. But they've done it in print, not online. Reading rooms were set up at the Centennial Hall Convention Center in Juneau today. Volunteers from the League of Women Voters and the Retired Public Employees of Alaska poured over one set of the documents. Another set was scanned for MSNBC.com. You can find the emails at palinemail.msnbc.msn.com. Mother Jones and ProPublica co-sponsored that website. The Anchorage Daily News and the New York Times and the Washington Post all did this sort of thing too. The Washington Post blog, The Fix, had said they were going to move 100 people from the lower 48 physically to Alaska to read the documents there. But then they realized that everybody would be putting the documents online as fast as possible, so then they could be read by everyone, so they didn't airlift anybody to Alaska. It's essentially been a crowdsourcing problem today. Everybody read, and then tell everybody else what you find. The Huffington Post did not pay for their own set of the documents, but they too have been asking people to share at their website what they have discovered in the emails as they browse them. Now, just one note here. The Associated Press is taking a slightly more perplexing approach. Even though the full cache of emails is already online for free, thanks to people scanning and uploading them, the Associated Press has chosen to fly the documents to somewhere in the continental United States where they have created a physical archive of the emails in print that is only available to their paying customers. No, I don't know why. I really don't. I don't know why. Maybe they have paying customers who hate computers. I don't know. These websites and news organizations today have made the Sarah Palin emails immediately available and searchable, basically in the hopes that they could harness the intense interest that a lot of very energetic people have in Sarah Palin in order to make sense of this as a news story. The question is, has all that time and effort in box hauling turned up anything of interest yet today? And big picture, why exactly do we know about the beef, tequila, and condoms email? Joining us now is the person who set all this in motion with his September 2008 request for all emails sent and received by then Governor Palin, David Corn, Washington Bureau Chief of Mother Jones and columnist for PoliticsDaily.com. David, it's great to see you. Thank you for being here.
Great to be with you. I've never been called a Wood Pope massacre
doer.
Yes. Engager, mounter, yes.
Why did you put this broad request in the first place?
Think back long ago, in those foggy days of 2008, when John McCain picked Sarah Palin, she was such an unknown that journalists throughout the lower 48 were scrambling to find out anything they could about her. I was in that pack, and one of the first stories I came across was about an email request that had been put into her office for emails of her aides, not of hers. Okay. And I also discovered that about 1,000 of them had been withheld, probably under sketchy or dodgy exemptions. But it got me looking at the law, and I said, hey, that open records law in Alaska is not so bad. Let's sort of shoot for the moon and put in a request not for aides, but for her emails. And initially, I got a response back from the state that was somewhat encouraging. It would take 8 hours of computer time to do this, and it might cost a couple $1,000, but we're going to start, and you have to give us a check now for $500. I said, pretty good, let's go ahead. Then it turned out, as you referred to earlier, she had more than one account. And in fact, she had 2 private accounts that she used for much of her state business.
So she had an Alaska.gov address or something like the equivalent of that, but then also private address.
GovSarah@yahoo.com. I mean, that site became known and was hacked. But that caused a big problem because the state IT people claimed, listen, those are Yahoo records. We can't reach them, we can't capture them and collect them for you. So eventually they figured out the only way we could get her emails is by looking at what she sent from her unofficial account to the official accounts of people who worked for her. They came up with 51 people, or what people who worked for her sent from their official account to her unofficial account.
Okay, so there had to be one official account in the mix in order for them to be able to
If she sent something to an unofficial account of someone who worked for her that had to do with state business, forget it. It's lost. If she sent something to a state employee or someone outside the state that had to do with state business, that too was lost. So this was the best they could do, and it's an approximation of what you'd expect.
And it also explains exactly why people use their personal email accounts so that they can evade open records.
Well, she didn't know this ahead of time, but it made it clear and obvious that we couldn't get her emails before the election of November 2012, because this just took months to get together, and then took years to review, and so got her to, around that scrutiny that erupted at the beginning.
In terms of what has been gone through already today, and it has been sort of a crowdsourcing effort, but there's been a lot of trained reporters going through it too. Is there anything that sheds new light or is important in Sarah Palin's record?
Well, there are no bombshells, as one would say, but we at Mother Jones, working with MSNBC.com and ProPublica, have put up this archive, and we've been methodically going through these emails, and we've looked at a few thousand. And there are a couple of interesting things. I mean, we can talk about redactions in a moment, because sometimes what's most interesting is what they
what's
don't,
not there,
what
what's
they won't show you.
Yeah.
But for instance, in March, it was June 2007, she wanted to go to a religious event with John Hagee.
John Hagee, who we were just talking about.
You were just talking about him. John Hagee, to remind people who can't remember what 4 or 5 minutes ago, is a pastor in Texas who is very anti-gay, very anti-Catholic, and he had a whole controversy when John McCain accepted his endorsement in 2008, and then had to renounce him. But Sarah Palin was making time on her schedule to go to a religious event. It was nothing about politics, and she was even asked to sort of do the greeting at the event for John Hagee. So it shows you that she was, and this was all from her. She wasn't. She was talking to her schedulers. I want to be there.
This is not just her being asked. This is her saying, "I want to be part of it."
I want to be there. So it shows that she had a real affinity or a real interest in this fellow. And I think it's an indication of sort of how, if you want to use this term, I don't mean it pejoratively, but how far she might be on that spectrum of social conservatism.
On the issue of redactions, who gets to there are some interesting things that are blocked out of the emails. Who actually gets to decide what gets redacted?
Lawyers who worked for Sarah Palin, or the governor now, who used to be Sarah Palin's lieutenant governor.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, it's not like we're going to go to independent source. And so there's an email that the subject heading indicates it's about meetings between Palin staffers and Vice President Cheney about a pipeline in Alaska and the implications for the Endangered Species Act. That's withheld. There's an email about potential conflicts of interest involving Todd Palin, her husband. That's been held back. There's an exchange that has a subject heading that just says same sex. And everything in that exchange is redacted.
Okay.
Who knows what they were talking about?
Yeah, and if it had anything, okay, yeah.
And so,
the mind reels.
And they're just, there's just a lot of redactions throughout the releases, and you just can't know if they're legitimate, which they might be, or if they're covering up something that's more embarrassing rather than a legal issue.
Because at this point, at least, those redactions are unappealable. There's nobody.
Well, they probably. I mean, you could go to court and you could file an appeal, but first you have to go through 25,000 pages.
David Corn, Washington Bureau Chief of Mother Jones, columnist for PoliticsDaily.com, and the man we really have to blame for all this.
I'm sorry. I apologize to all those trees.
I will plant a few trees in your name for this one, David. Thank you.
Perhaps we are not properly educating our youth in the exceptional nature of America. It's worrisome because this belief in American exceptionalism is something that every new generation has got to make its own if we expect our republic and our liberties to be secure and to live on. For America to survive, we have got to pass this on to that next generation, to the young kids who are here, to the students.
You know, this real America, does it exist, John?
Well, in terms of real American and exceptionalism, look, the most basic thing that people can do in support of democracy is vote. And we take our votes very seriously. The people of Alaska voted for Sarah Palin, and Sarah Palin quit. Exceptional people don't quit. And I seriously tell my kids this probably 2 or 3 times a week. It's better to lose than to quit. So she can sit there and she can talk about being exceptional. She can talk about better of America. If she were a better person, she would have stood and fought. She chose to check out and to do it to make money. I've got no problem with making money, but that's what she is. She's a reality.
I have a different observation, though. He hears what's going on. That speech, the first 20 minutes, was every vapid cliche strung together. It was complete, almost nonsense.
Suppose Senator John Doe puts forth a constitutional amendment that would outlaw abortion, even in cases of rape or incest, and he asked you to attend the announcement and support him in that. Would you do it?
I would. Yes, a proposal like that, I would stand by it.
Let's be completely clear about the facts here. There is no place in the world and no time in history where restricting women's reproductive rights makes a people or a nation more free or more equal. These extreme positions on abortion are, without any question, a war on American girls and women, and the fact that there are women who are both complicit and participatory in it is really neither surprising nor unprecedented. It has always been true, and it is incredibly important that we recognize that despite the fact that we can be very proud of these women and as politicians, that the question is, how do women as citizens fare on the other side of them either being elected or not elected?